as I've said from time to time, I think we have to change our worldview. And that's very challenging, how to live in a transition period when your society is largely embedded in one worldview and needs to shift to another one. And how you do that dance is very, very challenging.
Okay. Enough. Excellent. Thank you. Back over here.
Are you switching tapes?
I have switched tapes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Everyone should have to do this.
Yes, they should, you're right.
Oh,
It helps to concentrate the mind and...
Although I spent a lot of time thinking about this. So,
Yeah.
So, there was at Princeton, they had a professor, Douglas Heath, and they asked him to follow 25 students through Princeton to see what the Princeton education, how it affected their lives. And so he had interviews with each one of these students, each of the 4 years. The only problem was that when they were finished, they realized that his process of interviewing them made quite a big difference in what their Princeton's experience had been, which is a thought for you who have 3 years to go at Middlebury and you who have 4 years to go at college, is that it'd be good if you could, if by yourself or with another friend, really reflect on what the college experience had been for you that year and see how it might affect the next upcoming year. I think colleges should have such programs. So.
Death is said to be a continuation of life, like it's simply the next stage or the transition into the spiritual world, as Ellen Tadd said. That's what I got from her book. What are your thoughts on death and how death is perceived in our society?
Well, death is clearly a big question, and I'd say our society handles it very badly. As I've already said to you, my belief is that I'm a spirit, and that when inhabiting this body, and that when I die, I will go into spirit form. As my friend Ellen Tadd says, it's much more of a challenge to be born than to die. That when you're a free spirit, to come in and take on bodily form is very restricted. In spirit form, you move at the speed of thought, but in bodily form, as you know, you slow down. Now there are great compensations, a great opportunity to learn. The taste and the smells and the views and all the bodily experiences you have, which can be such a delight, are a reward. And in fact, I think that's what's too bad, is that people don't realize how lucky they are to be embodied, particularly if you're living a relatively comfortable life. But it was funny, I was at a social occasion in Castine, Maine, and it was a large cocktail party, and I didn't know anybody in particular. And I found myself talking to the head of a large medical institution in Bangor, Maine. And it's one of those times when you say a sentence and you say, oh, that was pretty good. Because I found myself saying to him, well, if I could really have an influence on the health programs in the United States and save a lot of money, it would be change the American attitude towards death. Because I was talking to my son Michael, your cousin, Uh, and I think he looked it up on his BlackBerry, and he said, in one case he said 25% of our medical expenses are in the last 6 months of life. And the other one had it something like 30 to 50%. So we spend a lot of money. And I think a lot of it is because Americans are afraid of dying. And they sense this is the end if they die. And if they could only relax and say, okay, this journey is over. Another person I admire is a man named Willis Harman. Willis Harman was president of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which, if you want to look it up on the web, you'll find it very interesting site. Noetic means other ways of knowing. And I asked him once how he came to be president of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, because he had been professor of engineering at Stanford, a very effective professor of engineering. And he said he got there kicking and screaming that he had this science, the real science framework of looking at life, and he shifted to this noetic framework of seeing reality as being much greater. And when he got an incurable disease, he wrote a letter to his friends saying, "Don't feel sorry for me. I'm looking forward eagerly to my next adventure." And I think that's such a great way. And if Americans could only see death that way, they'd be a lot happier, lead happier lives, and save the health system a great deal of money.
What do you believe the greatest problems that, or what are the greatest problems that have been solved in your lifetime, and what problems will the next generation need to solve?
What problems we solved in our lifetime?
Or if we just created more?
Hmm?
So, or if we just created more?
Well, we've certainly made huge technological advances. There's no question about that. And I was actually at a World Education Board meeting in New York, and I can't remember the name of the trustee, but he said everything's a trade-off. And you usually find that's the case. You gain something and you lose something. As I think you know, I have a form of cancer, multiple myeloma, and I say to my cancer doctors, I say, you treat me like I'm a chemical machine when I'm really a flow of energy. And I tell them about a doctor, he's a VA doctor who wrote a book, I can't remember the name now, in the mid-'80s, and he was interested in energy. He said he was a young, probably an intern when penicillin was invented, and he said it was wonderful that you saved a whole lot of lives that you hadn't been able to save before. But he said it had a profound effect on medicine, that they started to look for the chemical that would solve the problem. And so that he said that he, who was interested in energy, had a very hard time getting grants. And when he get good research published, he'd find that nobody would ask for reprints, just like how he get influence. And there are some interesting experiments that he describes in his book where cancer was reversed by some flow of energy. So I feel that, and I indicated with my story about the Aborigines, I mean, I think we pay a price for the technological advances we've had. Some of them, I think, certainly have improved life and are well worth keeping. I think some of them are way over the top we don't need. And I think, to answer your second part, the challenge we have ahead is to how, in Thomas Berry's terms, how do we learn to connect with the universe? How do we develop our other ways of knowing? How do we really become interconnected? I remember saying to someone once, you know, I could be in favor of saving the rainforest for a number of good reasons up in my head. That it reduces the amount of CO2, it reduces possible biochemicals, et cetera, all good intellectual reasons. Or I could fight to save the rainforest just because I'm in love with the rainforest, I'm in love with the trees. So I think somehow we have to make that connection. It's one thing to make it up in your head, and it's another thing to really feel it in your body.
Do you believe the technology of like cell phones, televisions, and computers are taking away the connectedness of people to each other and to the world around them? And have you noticed changes in interactions with people since these technologies have come about?
Well, it's easy for me to sound like, you know, an old person saying how life isn't as rich as it used to be, kind of response to that. I have a good friend named Charlie Hess, who's a businessman. He's the head of a firm called Inferential Focus. And briefly what they do, they read 250 periodicals and look just for facts, sale of candles going up, and so forth. And then they get together, and it's a small group of them, about 8 or 10, and say, what do these facts tell us about what's going on in the world? And so he's built a very good business out of this. And he comes up and meets with Fidelity and that kind of firm. So my source of information of how it's affecting people is more from him than my own direct personal experience. And he says that people are so wedded to doing something now, to being in contact, to having their BlackBerries, that he finds that when he goes to meet with these young business people, that they're you know, shaking if they have to take time out to really consider any long-range view of what's going on. And at one point he was given 2 hours to meet with the members of a big company to talk about the future. They first of all, they're so busy they cut it to an hour, and then they're 15 minutes late coming to the meeting and left early, so he had less than 45 minutes to try and get them to pause to think about what's going on in the future. And he gave me a book, an article that Google, the point was that Google was making us stupid. Did I send that to your dad?
Yeah, my dad showed it to me.
Yeah. And that's written by someone who said that he and he felt his colleagues were literally no longer able to read long research papers. They couldn't handle it. And your dad told me a story about going over to help some friend of his and some carpentry exercise, help him, I think it was fix a door or something like that. And the friend's daughter was there, and your dad was looking around for where the outlet was And the daughter said, oh, I'll call my dad. She picked up her cell phone, called her dad to find out where the outlets were in the garage. And he was commenting how frequently people just interact with one another. He could look around the garage and see the outlet. He suspected that the man probably didn't know where the outlets were anyway. So there are evidence that it takes away from living in the present. I'm fascinated. You go out in the Boston Garden in the early morning. I haven't done this now for a while, but I imagine it's still true. And you see old Chinese people out there just walking around the garden in the early morning. A few doing Tai Chi. And then shortly after that, you have the business people, young people, striding through, often on cell phones, and you feel that they're not in touch with the beauty that's surrounding them. And so that it's as I say, I may sound like an old person, and I am, but it sounds like, it sounds to me that it's interfering with the capacity of communicating with the earth and the universe.
What has been the most difficult challenge you've faced in your life, and how have you overcome it?
I'd say the most difficult challenge for me was growing up. I was not physically matured. I was slow maturing, which is hard. Was hard on me. I'll take you on a kind of interesting digression. One of the exercises we did in Ellen Tabb the other day was after meditating, she asked us to imagine walking down a stairway, coming to a door, opening the door, finding yourself in someplace. Could be anything, could be any time, history. And look at your feet, seeing what was on your feet, seeing how your legs look, what your bodice looked like, what your face looked like, and then going home, whatever the home might be, so forth. And it's amazing, you do that, and it happens. And it's not for about 20 of us in the group. And almost everybody had that experience. A few people got thinking too much, and so they were thinking their picture of what was happening to them. And the second time I did that, I felt like I was in an ancient city, probably felt sort of maybe like Venice. I looked at my feet. I had black shoes on with silver buckles. I had white stockings on, and then the bottom sort of felt velvet. And then I looked at my face, and my face was so awful that I was wiped out for the rest of the exercise. I mean, when she said go, imagine, I was able to do a little bit of it. But my face was sort of skeletal and pulpy and was just awful. And I did imagine living in a fairly wealthy house, but being really a mean person. And she, when I shared that with the group, you don't have to share, but when I shared that with the group, I said, I need help, this is what happened to me. And Ellen visited that life and said, well, that you've been in a terrible accident, and you did, you just were mean after that. And there's another member of our group about my age whose grandson apparently is disfigured and is just a wonderful person. And I'd read also about somebody who's greatly disfigured who was just a great presence. So I was not in that lifetime able to be that kind of person. So that's a long way around saying that I think when you ask what your difficulty, what's the difficulty in your life, you have a difficulty, that's given, but how you handle it is your choice. And so that looking back on it, I think I could have perceived my condition differently, which would have been easier.
What are you the most proud of in your life?
Being a teacher. I had, we were traveling in India. We were in the really fairly outback of India, and I had during the night I had really some fierce chest pains. So when I woke up in the morning, Nancy went off with our Indian friend to find a doctor to find out what had happened. And I remember getting up and looking out the window and seeing these little group of school children in their uniforms going to school. And I felt a fierce joy of having been a teacher.
What is something you regret in your life?
Well, I won't be specific about it, but one of the I think true principles of living is that what you pay attention to grows. You give it energy. And so you have a choice. If something that you don't like happens, if you choose to let it go, it doesn't play a big part in your life. But if you give it attention, it grows like one of those huge balloons in the Macy parade. And it can cause you a lot of pain, and it can cause your family and friends pain. So I look back and think that I caused myself pain and family pain when I need not have done so.
Throughout your life, you've traveled a great amount. Do you have a favorite place? And what has been the best part of your travels? And what do you find the most interesting about traveling?
I think my favorite, well, I like Kyoto as a city very much. And it's a funny thing to say, but I like Granite Island it's a place, it's an island, not a very big island, the south coast of Australia. And this is one of those, I've only been to Australia once, it was one of those chance day trips. We couldn't go where we wanted to go, so we took this other trip, and we went to Granite Island, which is a small island, and you walk around the outside of it, and it was just a gloriously beautiful day, and the sea, the ocean. So that's a special place for me. Traveling, I'm not particularly visual. I have to ask Nancy often, have I been there or not? So for me, the special times are when you have some chance to really interact with what's going on locally with people or events. Those are the kind of memories that stick in my mind. Mm-hmm. I remember we lived at Literacy House, which was then 10 miles outside of Lucknow, and is now surrounded by the city of Lucknow. Has grown so much that it's now in the city, but then it was in the countryside, and there were farmlands around it. And the main road from Lucknow to Kanpur, which was a big manufacturing center, which was about 2 lanes wide then. And I remember one evening going out and walking on that road and feeling like the blood vessels of the earth were beating just under that road. It was a really sort of mystical moment. And those are the kinds, for me, traveling, those are, being abroad, those are the kind of things I remember.
So in the ways of knowing, would you say you're more what sensation do you most feel like you know in? Is it like thinking, feeling, sensing, or imagining? What would you, or do you say you do all of those?
Well, I think thinking.
Mm-hmm.
There was a piece in the Boston Globe about 3 Sundays ago about the babies, how the babies view the world, what's going on in it, and the fact that their cerebrum isn't fully developed, so they sort of more open to what's going on in the world, and then they talked about doing a test. Brain imaging of jazz musicians, and how they really had to get out of the cerebrum to really be creative. I haven't read her book because I think it's just I'm not sure it's published yet. But she's apparently got some new way of framing neurology of knowing. And I do know that when she started to talk about it, she talked about autistic savants. They used to be called idiot savants, but now they're called autistic savants. Those are people who may have some trouble just interacting with us in a normal way, but maybe have a fantastic mathematical capacity, so they can tell you the 17th power of 267, just like that kind of thing. And it seems to be that they can get out of that their thinking, they're not able to use their cerebrum. That's depressed, so they can tune into the universe in some way and get these answers just like that. But I've been brought up in